Um, Last week we talked about commitment, and I made the statement that I cannot generate desire, I cannot generate commitment. I can't do that. It's my role, my calling to do what's necessary to provide all of what's necessary for you and for me to know what we need to be committed to God, but I can't generate that. This week, we're going to be looking at community because we need community, true Christian community. Next week, I'm going to ask the question, are you a contender? And that actually, it's going to be really cool. It's a really awesome idea. And it wasn't my idea. It was PJ's idea. We were having a conversation, and I don't remember what it was he said, but we were having this conversation, and I was just like, you can quit talking. I'm writing some stuff down you said because it just gave me an idea. And so next week, we're going to talk about what it means to be a contender. And if you're familiar with the fight world, you know what a contender is, and we'll look at that next week. But guess what? I can't create a desire in you to be committed to God, and I also cannot force you into Christian community. It's just not something that I can do. But here's what I can do. Like I mentioned last week, I think I said something to the effect of that God has been revealing to me the things that I'm not going to say that maybe I need to tweak, or maybe I need to present differently, or something along that lines. See, like I can't make you want to have Christian community, but maybe we can come together and figure out where we need that community and look at what we need to do to make it more accessible, to more of a reality. And so we need it. I mean, it's just that simple. You and I need to be in real, true Christian community. And we do need to be here on Sunday morning. Don't get me wrong. When I say this, what we're doing here right now in this hour, we do need. It is a necessity. But this, in and of itself, is not true, full-blown, fully realized Christian community. This is an aspect, one part of it, just one of the blocks, one of the pieces of Christian community. And so let's just look, let's reread. I know you heard it, but let's look one more time at verses 3. But actually, before we read that, I want to read a couple of verses. Proverbs 17:17. It says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. And then 27:17 says this, as iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friends. That word countenance, you know what that means? It means your facial expressions. Let me just, if you think about it, when somebody walks in here, and if somebody were to walk in that doesn't know anything about us, and if they stood where I'm standing, and you can read this however you want to read it, and they looked at our facial expressions, what would they think? If the only thing that somebody that did not know us, the only thing they had to gauge our walk with God and our fellowship with one another and what God is doing in our life is by reading our faces, what would they think? Would they read our facial expressions on Sunday morning and say, man, these people love what they do, they love where they are, and they love one another? Or would our facial expressions give another message? That's what your countenance is. And we are supposed to sharpen each other. We're supposed to help each other grow. We're supposed to be help each other to be more on point, to the point where when you and I do what you and I are supposed to do in each other's lives, it will literally be reflected through our faces, because when you and I experience Christian community, it's going to change the way that we literally look. Now, I'm not talking about a plastic surgeon, but you know the old saying, it'll turn your frown upside down, that thing. Because we need each other. Look again at verses 3 through 8. It says this, "For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, but all the members do not have the same function, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another, having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. Our ministry, let it be used in ministering. He who teaches in teaching, he who exhorts in exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness." Now you're sitting there going like, all right, this portion is talking about spiritual gifts. What does that really have to do with Christian community? In fact, when I was reading it and studying that, I was kind of like, God, you led me to this passage, and this is about this is about spiritual gifts. I want to be preaching on Christian community. You got to connect some dots. And it's like God kind of said, well, if you're not using your spiritual gifts, you won't have any Christian community. You'll just be sitting there. You have to use your gifts in order for the body of Christ to function. And so therefore, when the body of Christ functions like it's supposed to, guess what you're going to have? You're going to have Christian community. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I'll use that. But here, remember, we're going to define for our understanding what Christian community looks like. Just really simple. Diligent in doctrine, fellowship, breaking bread, and praying. In other words, we're going to try to make sure that what we teach and preach is biblically accurate. We're going to make sure that what we do, this is the fellowship part. The fellowship part we're going to really kind of concentrate on this year, because that's going to be a huge part of Christian community. You can't have Christian community if you're not fellowshipping with one another and then breaking bread together. You know what? It's fun to go eat with somebody, and get to know somebody. In fact, here's the first kink I'm going to throw into status quo. Some of you might not like this, but here's what I'm going to ask everybody to do. It won't be this Wednesday because we're not going to meet Wednesday because of the weather. The next time we meet on Wednesday night, it's going to rattle some of your feathers. You get mad at you got 2 weeks to get over it. Sit with somebody else on Wednesday night. Sit with somebody you don't sit with on Wednesday night. I'm not fussing, I'm not complaining, but here's what you'll notice. Every single Wednesday night, the same people sit with the same people. That's bad, that's fine. But a couple weeks ago, I went and sat with somebody. They're not here. I'd mention them. It wouldn't do any good to embarrass them, so I'm not going to. But I actually went and sat with somebody that I hadn't really had a lot of conversations. Sat there for an hour. In fact, his wife had to come and basically said, y'all got to either she didn't put it this way. My wife would have. She'd have said, y'all either got to hush or you got to walk home, because we just, and so when you actually share a meal together in conversation, you get to know people. So the next time we have Wednesday night, I'm going to ask you to sit with somebody else, somebody new, and have a conversation. And build relationships. We need relationships. Breaking bread together and praying for each other. Jeff and I met, and we've been talking about those first Wednesday night prayer times that we have, and it has lacked what, we did something last year, and it really impacted people's lives. This year, I'm not seeing the results that I thought we would have, and so we've been talking about some things we could do different. So the next time we have one of those first Wednesday night prayer meetings is prayer times, it's going to look a little different. Because if we don't have all of these things, we're not going to experience Christian community. I mean, I could get up here and I could kind of just gloss over and kind of give you some general information about what the Bible says, and and then we could be glad we were here. We could sing some good songs, and we could go home and we could be happy we were at church, and whatever. But here's what I know: we need Christian community if we're going to grow as individuals, and if this congregation is going to be the congregation that God wants it to be. And so spiritual gifts, we need to use it in ministry. And then ministry is a building block of Christian community. So what do we really need for it to occur? Based on what we just read, we need people that can teach. Sunday school, yes. Small groups, yes. Wednesday nights, with different things. And we need people that can act. And you don't have to be a teacher. There's a huge misconception that, like, if you're in a small group or whatever, you got to have somebody that's this lecture-based kind of person. You know what? All you got to do is have somebody kind of get the ball rolling. And if you got a group of people that really want to fellowship and grow in their faith, it's an amazing thing. You just got to have somebody to kind of facilitate the group. It'll take care of itself. Yeah, I use the word facilitate. We've been talking about that. Quit looking at me. PJ and I have been talking a lot too, and I'm getting dirty looks. Not dirty looks, but we also have to have an environment where we uplift one another, where we love one another. There's two sides to this. We've got to be willing to love on one another. The flip side to that is, for some people, we need to know how to love on. I know I say things along this line, but I promise you, this is one of those things that I'm never going to quit saying. We could go up and down every aisle, every row, every family, every people hurt. And we have a lot of hurting people, physically, emotionally, medically, whatever. But if you come in here, and I'm going to touch on this in a minute, and pretend like you're okay, and you put your happy church face on, and you let everybody think that you're okay, we're not going to be able to love on you. And I know y'all probably get so sick of this, but I can't help it. I wouldn't have done what I do and gone and if I didn't want to be able to help. And if it's something I can't help, then I'll find somebody that can. To the point where I've got a key to a buddy of mine that pastors a church in Laurel. I've got a key to his church, or to their church, because he's like, there's going to be some people that need counseling. I can't counsel with them. And I was meeting with so many people from his church that it'd just be easy for me just to give you a key. So I got a key. So that when somebody in his church, he sends me a message, hey, I need you to meet with so-and-so. Okay. And I just go over there and meet with them. If I can't, I'm the same way. If I can't help, I'll find somebody that can. But if you have a need and you need to be ministered to and you need to be loved on, and I don't care what it is, if all you need is a hug, if I don't know, I can't help. And nobody can help you if you don't ask. And it's okay to ask. So we need an environment where we can love and uplift and minister to one another. We need people who can support the ministry financially. The box in the back for the group of people that are going to the Dominican Republic, I don't care if it's that trip, another trip, any kind of mission project or any kind of mission work. This is what's going to happen. It's people, if you put a group of people to go on a mission trip, if there's a team together, there's going to be some people in that group that the money's just not an issue. Oh, well, you want to go on a mission? All right, well, I can go on a mission trip. But there's some people that are going to have to scrimp and save and literally try to raise money. And so for some people that, in whatever area of ministry and the different things we support, the only way that ministry is going to be able to take place is if some people who have an extra ability to put some resources towards that and some finances towards that, if they are helped and supported. So you and I, not everybody in here can go on a mission trip, but if enough of us get together and help help other people get there, then we get to be a part of it. And so even if I can't make the trip, like the Peru trip, like I would love to go on to Peru, but my friend that's there, I know the things that they do, and since I hurt my back, I can't go. I'd be worthless in Peru. I'd love to go and I'd love to see it, but I couldn't. There would be nothing there I could do. But I might could help support somebody to go. So we need people to, and that goes beyond the tithe. And so we need some people to help support with finances. And then we also need diligent leaders. We need people that can lead. And you know what? I can't be there to talk to every single person about every single issue with everything that's going on. I wish I could, but I can't. So we need leaders within the congregation. That's why, we have different people over different areas so that we can have leadership in areas that we have, and like whether it's ministry or youth or children or whatever it is. That's why we have leaders in those areas. We need diligent leaders. And so we need people that are willing to lead with humility and self-sacrificial attitudes. And in this whole passage, there's one thing that it talks about is diligence. It talks about in this section, in the next section we're going to lead, it talks about what diligence is. And it tells us that we're supposed to think soberly. It means that we're supposed to make sound judgment using self-control. You know what one of the hardest things for me to do is? Not tell people what I think. That's one of the hardest things. It ain't the hardest thing in my life, but as far as things I struggle with, that's real close to the top. For me, just to tell people what I think. So we need people that can lead without putting their desires ahead. And so one of the things that it means for diligent leaders is, what we need to do? We need people that will push for what the church needs, not just what the church wants. There are all kinds of things I want, but we don't need it. So what do we need? First thing, go psychology and counseling kind of thing and whatever. One of the things you learn is real needs versus felt needs. In other words, there are things that we really need. You need to eat. You need shelter. You need community. You need, there are things that we need that are real needs, and then there are felt needs. Well, I feel like I need a new car. All right, well, you might need a new car, but do you need a $100,000 whatever car, or do you just need a car to get you to work? I need a new house. Okay, well, do I need $1 million house, or would a smaller scale house be okay? There's a difference between a real need and a felt need. And one of the things that we have a hard time in church life doing is making the determination between real needs and felt needs. So we have some real needs. And I've been trying to put my mind around this idea of Christian community, and I thought, man, we have all these different groups and whatever that need community. You know how many families, and I'm trying to put a list together, and I'm gonna put a list together. And I didn't realize how many families in our churches have kids 10 years old and under. We could do a whole community group for the young families in our congregation that have kids 10 and under, and that could be a great source of community. Some of us have recently become, or some of you are on the cusp of become empty nesters. We need community. Some people handle it better than others. Most days I handle it great, but there's days that I don't. But for those of us that are like, on that verge or having that experience, we're going to need community, because you know what? It's one thing when you wake up one day and you look around and your kid that's been there for 20 years ain't coming home. You go, at first you're like, man, hot dog, I remember when we could do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, and it's fun. then you go, man, I hate to admit this, but I almost kind of miss the guy sometimes. You know, you have to do that. So those of us that are in that area, we need Christian community. There's all kind of areas in our church that have groups and different, and you know, we could do all kind of community groups based on just that. Those different groups of people that can do life together because they have shared things, and that's a real need because we really need people to do community with. PJ and I have been talking, just a whole lot about we're in this weird position as where we have all of these students that are in college and college age and then that are about to graduate. And so like after this graduation, there's technically not going to be a whole lot of high school students. But yet we have this awesome group of young adults in college age. Some are in school and some are working. But we have one of the most awesome groups of young adults. I've been in ministry over 25 years, and literally we have one of the best groups of 18 to 25-year-olds that I have ever seen in a congregation anywhere that I've ever been. And if we don't figure, and I promise you, PJ and I, especially him, he's been pouring out trying to, and digging in to try to figure out how to do Christian community with that group when they're spread out in a 100-mile circle and trying to figure out how to do community with them. Because they need it, he wants to provide it. But guess what? We live in a new world where if you got somebody in Meridian and somebody in south of Hattiesburg and wherever, it's hard to, and so we're trying to figure that out. But we must have Christian community or we're not going to survive. It's just a reality. It's a real need. And so what does that look like? We don't know yet. We're going to figure it out. Look at verses 9 through 13. It says this. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. So here we go. This is huge. I've seen this before, but it really jumped out. Love without hypocrisy. The King James says dissimulation, things that are not similar. In other words, if we're going to love, we cannot love if we're pretending to be something that we're not. That's literally what that means. So if I come in here and I pretend to be something that I'm not, and if you're pretending to be something that you're not, guess what? We can say we love each other, but it'll never happen because we're being hypocrites and we're pretending to be something that we're not. So if I come in here and I tell you that I love you, and then you say, well, I have a need, I have a situation, and I just say, well, I'm going to pray for you, and then I never give you a second thought, then I'm a liar and I don't love you. But if you're sitting there and you need me for something and you won't tell me, then you're not giving me the opportunity to love on you. So we've got to quit pretending so that God can work in our lives. And he goes on, he says, we're supposed to abhor what's evil. In other words, that literally means that evil should be detestable to a Christian. That's what that means. I had to look it up because I didn't know what that word meant. You know there's two types of evil? Main types, two general types. Sin, of course. We know sin is evil. If you're living in sin or condoning sin, we understand that's a simple thing. That's the simple definition. Of course, sin is evil. But do you know what else is evil? It's also evil when somebody does something harmful or something that has a negative impact towards ministry. That's evil. It's easy to make a list of sins. You know, X is a sin, Y is a sin, Z is a sin, this activity, I think this is a sin, this mentality, this whatever. You know, we can read the 10 Commandments and go, man, it's easy to designate some sins. But guess what? What about when it's not a thou shalt or thou shalt not? What about when somebody's activities, attitudes, and actions are hurting the ministry? You want to know what? That's evil. And we should detest what is evil. And so if somebody is intentionally hurting the ministry, that is evil, and we should be disgusted by it. So then it goes, once again, we're told in verses 8 and verse 11 that diligence is important. And remember, diligence is a push for what we need and not just what we want. So lacking diligence is harmful and has a negative impact on the congregation. So if we have a lack of diligence, that's evil. In other words, if we don't have anybody that will push and do and make a stand for what is needed, that's just not acceptable. And I know this, and it may just be me, but there's something I've seen it drives me nuts. There's this, especially over the last 15 to 20 years, I've just watched this trend in our culture. You know, and you'll hear me reference every once in a while. But if you're my age and are older, I remember when I was in school, if you were going to make an A on your report card, your score had to be between a 95 and 100. Anything under 95 was not an A. Then some years later, man, nobody was making A's. So what do we do? Well, let's just make an A from 90 to 100. That way, it'll be a bigger span. We'll have more people make A's. Do that. More people made A's. More honor roll students. Yay, we're doing something good. When I was in school, if I failed a test at school, you just failed a test. You failed a grade, you just failed a grade. The first school I taught in, if one of my students, I thought they were joking when they told me this. If a student failed a test, you give it to them 3 more times. Literally. They failed. We'll let them take it again. Why? They failed. Well, give them another chance. Oh, okay. I remember if you lost, you didn't get anything. You lost. You didn't get anything. Better luck next time. Work harder. I remember the first time I saw an honorable mention ribbon. We were doing a science fair or something along that lines, and they had given out the prizes, and then I saw these other little different colored ribbons on people's things. I was like, what is that? Oh, that's an honorable mention. What is an honor? Well, they didn't really win, but it wasn't bad. So we just thought it'd make them feel better if they were recognized. Okay, so we're giving them a prize for losing. Okay, whatever. Fast forward to the participation trophy. You could fill a trophy cabinet with participation trophies. Hot dog, I showed up a lot. So here's what our culture has said. Our culture has said, if we don't meet the standard, you know what? The United States used to set the standard in education and work, and now other countries are doing it. And now we're just skating by. Because our culture and our society has realized, you know what? If we don't meet the standard, rather than telling people to perform better, and in the fear of hurting somebody's feelings, instead of telling everybody to step it up, let's just lower the standard. Okay, what's that got to do with us? Because we do the same thing in church. Do the same thing in church. Last week, it's kind of like I made the statement. There's a recent study that said, that they have changed the definition of regular church attendance to once a month rather than weekly. Or, you know what? You're a good, solid church member, man. It used to be, it was this, all of these different things. And now, as long as your name's on the roll, a lot of people think, I'm a good church member. Promise you, when I was doing youth ministry, and I did youth ministry before Brian was born. He's 22, so you're talking, it's been a minute. And I'll never forget, Sonia and I went to an event that some of our teenagers were in, and whatever it was, and there was this teenager walked across the stage to do their talent, their whatever it was we went to this event for, and the announcer told who it was, blah, 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 and they were like, this person and their family, they're an active member at such and such Baptist church. And I looked at Sonia, I was like, I've never seen that person before in my life. But they're telling the whole world that they're an active member of the church. But here's what I know. Here's what I know. If we can figure out groups that can love on each other and meet each other's needs, and they can build community, and we can teach what's really true, and we can get, and I don't care if it's by age, I don't care if it's stage of life groups, I don't care if we have groups. At one congregation, we had a church, we had a small group of guys, and we got together and shot guns. We'd get together and we'd shoot stuff, and we'd have about, I've seen all kinds, I don't care what the group revolves around, but each and every one of us, myself included, we got to find somebody to get in a Sunday school group's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to build your Christian walk. You're not going to have as intimate of a relationship as if you're in a real, true small group with just a small number of people that you can really do life and share your heart with. And I don't care what the group revolves around, how it comes to pass, but if we're not involved in one another's lives, and if this is the extent of what we do, and we call this an attempt to grow in our faith, I know for a fact I'm not that good. And I really wish I was. I would love to be able to say, man, I can preach sermons that get everybody through the week, but that's not going to happen. My prayer is that I can give you something that gives you that spark, and that you need something. And I really do want to meet those needs as much as I can, to what level and to what degree I can, but I can't grow you in your faith. And without Christian community, you will not grow. It's just that simple. And so we need to do that. And we're told to love one another without hypocrisy. You know what love is? It means that we're supposed to be kind to one another, put each other's needs ahead of each other. We're supposed to serve God because we want to, not because we feel like we must. It's a want to, not a got to. So we can love on one another. You know what love does? If you read these and look at the characteristics, listen to this. I just took this straight from here and turned it into kind of a definition, and this is how I would define love based on what we just looked at. Love celebrates the promises of God. Love walks with you through hardships of life. Love intercedes for you in prayer. Love has a desire and a willingness to meet the needs of others, and love has a desire for fellowship. If we don't have those characteristics, and we don't have love. And if we're not willing to grow, and if we're not experiencing those things, it says that we're supposed to love without hypocrisy. Maybe it's time that we realize that we've been pretending that we love one another. Maybe we've been pretending that we love God. Maybe we've been pretending that we love the church. Maybe we've been pretending that we want to grow in our faith. Maybe it's time we stop pretending. You know, it's funny with like with Brian, when he was growing up, he would get so mad at me because like he would have jobs and whatever, and I'd tell him, you can't quit, or you can't call in sick just because whatever, and I'd make him try to teach him that you've got to have a work ethic and a standard, and you've got to learn social skills. You've got to be able to talk to people. All of these things, and he would get so mad at me. Well, then, you know, he moves to Oklahoma and gets a job with a lineman company, and then he's just doing whatever the initial hand work is, whatever they do. Anyway, they were going to have a promotion. And he was the youngest person, hadn't been there 6 months. And they were coming around trying to promote people. And nobody wanted to do it. And Brian's like, I'll do it. Because nobody wanted to work, he's like, nobody wanted to stay extra, he says, so the only reason I got promoted is because I told him I'd go to work. I said, I told you. Then he got another promotion. Same thing. Same kind of thing. You know, people don't want to work anymore. In fact, there's this thing that literally, Some of the states tried to pass a law where if you were on welfare, they wanted to mandate drug tests, and if you were a drug addict, that you couldn't receive welfare assistance. You know, welfare's fine for people that are really trying and need it, but they were threatened to be sued because, man, you just let people do what they want to do. Just give them the handout. You know, and then this is what I thought. You know, what if I had when Brian was growing up? Oh, you want to quit your job? All right, quit your job. Oh, you don't have any money, rather than just telling you got to. Fine, I'll just give you. If I just let him do what he wanted to do, he's 22 now. I had this vision. He'd be 22 years old, sitting on the couch, going, "I'm hungry. Bring me something to eat." Me saying, "Go get a job." No, bring me something. Won't you go get you some? Because you've always just given it to me. What kind of person would I have raised Brian to be? I was reading, got a book here recently. Craig Rochelle's called "Lead Like It Matters," and he's talking. Go through these cycles where whatever, and people that they'll say things like, "Well, the church didn't meet my needs. I'm not doing that," or whatever. And one of the things he says, "Well, church isn't doing this. The church isn't doing that. We could whatever." And one of the things he says is that one excuse is, "Well, I'm not being fed. The church just said I'm just not going to be fed." And he said, "Remind people that hungry people eat." I was like, man. So here's where I am. We can put together every single thing that you need to grow in your faith. And I can own the shortcomings that I have. I can own what we have and what we have not done, or what we haven't made available. I can own the fact that we're trying to put some of those things together. But it'd be kind of like with Brian. I can't make you get off the couch. So my question is this. Are we going to quit pretending like we love God, we love each other, we want to grow in our faith? And are we going to quit pretending like we want this church to be what it has the potential to be? Are we just going to sit on the couch? Let's pray.